Hello class, today we're going to be talking about the unicellular organisms and how they carry out all functions of life. This slideshow goes along with this note template right here that you'll find in Canvas. So starting off the presentation, what do all forms of life have in common? Have you ever thought about that? There's something that the beluga whale has in common with the paramecium, which is a single-celled organism that also has something involved with a flower and a fungus and a bacterium and all sorts of stuff. So what do they share? We're going to outline the functional characteristics of life. So the functional characteristics of life, let's define it before we jump into it. These are the structural, biochemical, physiological, or behavioral traits shared by all living things. So unicellular organisms, they're a part of these as well, even though we don't really think about life as the smallest things that we can't even see. We're also going to talk about how life is an emergent property. So emergent property means that something is a characteristic that an entity gains when it becomes part of a bigger system. So basically, these help living organisms better adapt to their environments and increase their chances of survival. So most people agree about all these characteristics that we're talking about life, but not everyone. There's still a debate going on between biologists. So first we have, all life has a cellular structure. This is according to the cell theory, and specifically part that says all living things are composed of cells. So at the very base level, we have prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells have a very simple structure and they don't have any membrane-bound organelles or nuclei. Eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, are much more complex, with a cell structure that looks more organized than the prokaryotic cells, and these have membrane-bound organelles like ribosomes and nuclei. All life can recognize and respond to changes in the environmental conditions. So, whenever it's hot outside, I go inside because it's too hot. So I can do this as a human, but also single-celled organisms can do this, and it doesn't have to be like a movement. For instance, we have this E. coli here, and it's taking in arabinose sugars, and that's going to trigger it to start expressing a certain gene. And that has to do with nutrients. So cells recognize this often by stimulation of a protein in the cellular membrane, which we'll talk about later, but it has to do with chemoreceptors, thermoreceptors, mechanoreceptors, and photoreceptors. So the example I gave about me going inside is an example of thermoreceptors. All living things can grow and or develop a lifespan. So we know what growing is. You grow up, I always grew up trying to be tall enough to ride the rides at Six Flags here in Arlington. But also trees grow. It takes a really long time. Or we have, for instance, the caterpillar to butterfly here that develops life stages. So as long as there's some development and some growth, that is considered life, a characteristic of life. All life has metabolism. So metabolism is just a sum of all the chemical reactions in the cell. And trust me, there's a lot of them that go on at the same time. So let's talk about what's part of metabolism. So enzymes, they help speed up metabolic reactions. And then we have anabolic reactions, which is where energy and smaller molecules join and fuse to become a larger molecule. Then we have catabolic reactions, which is a larger molecule going and splitting into energy and smaller molecules. So anabolic reactions are endergonic, and they use energy, and catabolic are exergonic, and they release energy. So one of the main reasons that viruses aren't living is because they don't have a metabolism. We'll talk about that more later. All life maintains homeostasis. So homeostasis is when I'm outside for too long and I start sweating. It's too hot, and so my body tries to cool my internal temperature by producing water. So this happens even in the smallest single-celled organism like this paramycelium here. So basically they use osmosis to get solute in and out depending on what the concentrations are. In humans, we have kidneys that help filter and maintain homeostasis. And also in animals, they have other adaptations, like these really big ears of a jackrabbit, and those also help maintain homeostasis in their own specific way. All life has the capability for reproduction. Life will create more life. So we know there's two types of reproduction, sexual and asexual. Sexual involves two parents and the fusion of a haploid cell, so this is meiosis, and that fuses the gametes, and it produces genetically unique and variated organisms within a species. And then we have asexual reproduction, and this is just one parent, so this would be like a bacterium. And this is just an identical copy of the parent. And this can happen by binary fission and mitosis. If you come over here, you can test yourself, and you can look to see if you can figure out which ones are sexual and which ones are asexual if you have time. So here we have all life exchanges energy and matter with the environment. So all organisms, they have to have a source of energy. So we have photoautotrophs that capture energy from the sun and convert it to chemical energy that's food. And then heterotrophs use the chemical energy and matter that they take in as food. So basically, we have the sun, that is our source of energy, coming, and the phytoplankton is using the sun's energy and light to make food for itself, and a little bit of heat is lost there. And then the phytoplankton is eaten by the krill, which is then eaten by the chinstrap penguin, which is then eaten by the seal, and at each trophic level there's more and more energy lost. And then all organisms excrete metabolic waste matter, so this can be, the lungs, the kidneys, and the skin. So in the lungs, we breathe out the carbon dioxide. Kidneys and skin, when you use the restroom, that's what happens. The kidneys are a part of that. And then the skin, sweating. In plants, this occurs through the leaves and the roots and the stem, so there are pores that open that help maintain homeostasis. And then in unicellular organisms, it happens directly across the cell membrane, which is why lots of cells, all cells actually, have a large surface area to volume ratio so they can maintain homeostasis. And lastly, at the population level, life adapts and changes over time. So one life, a life, is a single organism, and that does not adapt. But over time, natural selection and mechanisms of that shape the population. So when the population is evolving, the ratio of different genetic types changes, not a single individual organism genes change. So the brown rabbit is more adapted to its current habitat. See, it's right here. I bet you didn't even see it the first time. And the white rabbit is not. So with natural selection, this rabbit would probably get eaten, while this rabbit could probably hide better. And it has more degrees of fitness to where it can reproduce more because it's better suited to fit its habitat. That's all I got for this one.